Right. So if you were watching before, I got cut off because my daughter left her bed and it's to be bedtime right now. So we're going to try again, but I also might need to run out because such is life of a parent. All right. So before we went ahead and made a component for all of these images and the little box behind it and the background and the box shadow. Okay. And then we went ahead and started thinking about how would we refactor this more. Okay. So I'm not exactly sure how I want to refactor this one because this one has something different in it. So I think we're going to just make it like a component with children. But I at least can start with this part here. Okay. So I'm going to keep refactoring and then hopefully we get to a point where we can deploy too. All right. So I have this home folder here with my image with a border, which is this component here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another component to the mix. And I am going to call it something, but I need to think of a name. And I'm not great at thinking of names of things. So we're just going to call it something now and not worry about it. So we're to call it, okay, so we're already on the home page. So we don't need to see something about home. So we're to say text with image and button .tsx. All right. So the way that we create a component with React is we're going to say const text with image and button. And then we are going to make our component. All right, so then we can do our return statement and open it up. So now let's go and take a look at kind of how we have that laid out so we can decide what we're going to do. All right, so it looks like we have a body heading, which is already something that is a component that I made. Okay, and then we have a box with the text, the image border, and then a link with a button in it. Okay, so we would need to just, and then that is all within a box. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of this here, and I'm going to paste it into this return. All right, and then save. All right, React's going to yell at me, but that's because I haven't imported everything. So I am going to go ahead and import all of our undefined things. So I'm importing that from Chakra UI. I'm going to import that here. We have another media query here, so we're going to have to add that, but I'm going to finish doing my imports first and then go from there. All right. Import this link, which I'm pretty sure is from React Router DOM, and then import my button, which is one of my components. Okay, so now you can see that we have text blocks for this body text that's coming in. All right, and then we have the media query. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my props first, and what we want is going to have to be, I think what we're going to do is we're going to pass in a child's element here. So we're going to do children. And then we're going to do props. So let's do type props equals, and then children. And I'm letting Copilot drive here. And then instead of body text here, I'm going to get rid of that. And then I'm going to do my children. All right. So the next thing that we need to do is our media query, which if you were watching in the last video, our media query is from Chakra UI, and it basically is going to tell us what the minimum width of the screen needs to be before this variable here changes to true. Okay, so if the screen is larger than 900 pixels, then this variable will be true. And if it is smaller than 900 pixels, then this variable will be false. Okay. All right, so now that it's not yelling at us anymore, which it kind of is with this, which means we just didn't export our component name. Okay, but now that it's not yelling at us anymore, you can see that we still have some things that are hard-coded in here. and we don't want that. We want to not have anything hard-coded because we want this to be reusable. Okay, so in addition to children being a prop, I'm going to have heading be a prop, and then I'm also going to have image URL be a prop, and then I'm also going to have link URL be a prop. All right, it's yelling us now because we need to have those declared within our props. So we're going to have heading is going to be a string, image URL is a string, and link URL is a string. Okay. Here, by the way, we have that children is optional. I'm going to put that children is not optional. So that way that works. Okay, and so then instead of donate to the Junior Developer Fund here, we are going to have our heading. All right, and then instead of this hard-coded link here, we are going to have our image URL. And then instead of this hard-coded link here, we are going to have our link URL. Okay. Oh, and then we also have hard-coded the button text. So we should also add button text onto the list of props. So let's go ahead and write button text, which is going to be string. All right, so then now instead of donate here, we want this to be button text. Perfect. All right, so this is now hopefully our component text with image and button. So I'm going to go to my home page, which has the donate to the Junior Developer Jobs Fund, and I'm going to try to see if I can replicate it. Okay. So I'm going to comment it out. And when I comment it out, you're to see it disappear. So now we just have a blank spot. So then I'm going to add in it, I'm going to add my text with image button. Oops, nope. With image button. And I'm going to close it. It's mad at me because there are a bunch of props that are needed. So we're going to add the missing attributes. All right, and I already forgot that my children is going to, we can wrap it otherwise. So we can do this. All right, and then in here, we are going to have body text. And it's going to be, the text blocks is going to be job fund. So let's give that a try. Okay, so that is good so far, but you can see now we have to pass in the rest of our things. So the heading is going to be this, donate to the Junior Developer Jobs Fund. The image URL is going to be this guy here. The link URL is going to be this one here. And then the, oh no, I spelled button text on the, all right, so I'm going to go back here and change it to button. My bad. All right. And then the button text is going to be donate with an exclamation point. All right, so let's take a look now. So it's mad at me because I still had one more mention of the misspelled button text. Okay, so now it's not mad and it looks pretty good. Okay, so let me drag it. All right. Looks pretty good to me. All right, so now that we did that and it looks good, we can delete all of this code here. And we have this section, okay, which hopefully is easier to read. And we can keep on keeping on. Okay. So now we can replicate that with all of our other ones here. So we have this whole box that I'm going to comment out. So let me scroll down to where it says plan your projects. All right. And then I'm clicking command and then the slash, and that is going to comment that out. And then I can add text, image, and button. I'm going to just let it do its thing. And then I want to add in body text. Nope. I might just copy it here like this. And then save. All right. And then we don't need this. Okay. So let's verify that we did everything. So this is going to be planning a project JPEG. That looks good. Our link to /projects looks good. Body text is going to have the text blocks from project planning tools. So that looks good. And do we have anything else? Heading, plan your projects. Heading, plan your projects. Okay, cool. Oh, and hello, Vishu. Is that how you say your name? Anyway, hello. Let me know if you have any questions as we go through this. All right, so now that everything looks good, I can go ahead and delete that component the way it was and press save. All right, so I'm going to click this button to make sure it still works, and you can see that it is going to my projects page, which has a loader function on it to make sure that you're logged in. So it's not that big of a deal that it did that. That was its desired behavior. All right, and so now we have 2 of these blocks fixed. I'm going to skip this one because it is a little bit different than the other ones, but it should work the same in terms of we're having a child come in. So here we did a body text as our child, and we would do the accordion as our child instead, but it's going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to skip it and keep on keeping on down here. All right, so now we have this box. All right. Oh, hi. Yes. Okay. So you are a student first semester and you only know CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. Okay. Well, if you have any React questions, let me know. I'm using React with TypeScript right now, and we're making components. Okay. I already made this image with a border component. That's going to be this guy. And then I am now making like this section here because it's a reusable pattern on my entire homepage of my website. So as you can see, I have donate. This section looks the same as this section, which looks the same as this section. So instead of repeating myself and writing the same code over and over and over again, I can make a component, text with image and button, which is terribly named, I know. And then I can just call that component the same over and over. Okay. That way, the benefits of that is if I'm making an edit, I can edit once and then all of the other places are fixed. But yeah, interrupt me if you have any questions because I'm happy to tell you more about how it works. Okay, so I'm commenting out. I should be on networking. Nope, I'm on deploy in public challenge. So that's this one here. Okay, and I'm going to comment out that, and so it should disappear. All right, so now you see this blank space. So now I can add my component of this, which is going to be text with image, and GitHub Copilot is filling it in for me. So I'm going to let it and then just check to make sure it's right, which it's close, but you can see that the deploy in public portion here missed GitHub Copilot didn't get the right name. So I'm going to do that. Oh, and now that you see that I'm using my component, it's popping back up. It looks like I got the image wrong too. So let's go to the image URL and let's go look at what the image URL should be, which is this from my S3 bucket. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that URL, and then I'm going to put it here instead. And then hopefully we will see, yep, my image pop up. There we go. All right, the link URL looks to be correct, but I'm going to go ahead and click it to make sure. And it is. This is the correct page it's supposed to go to. All right. So then let's go ahead, and then button text is check it out. And it's supposed to be join the cohort. So I'm going to copy that and put it up here instead. So instead of check it out, it's going to say join the cohort. And you can see that that changed. All right, so I'm using, this is what I have instead. I'm passing in props. It's kind of like a function almost. I'm passing props into this component instead of writing all of the component out by hand. So now if I ever want to change what this component looks like, I can just change it in here instead. Okay, and then at any place that I use this text with image and button, it will change. So now that this looks good to me, and it does, I can delete all of this here on the commented out text and press save. All right. All right, so we have 2 more sections that we need to do. We need to do this network with industry professionals. And then we can go up to the hard part, which is going to be our accordion, which if we did our work correctly when we made this component, it shouldn't be bad. Okay, network with industry professionals. All right, we have, this is the box here where that component lives. All of that hard-coded information. I'm going to comment it out, which again is command and then the little backslash. And then we are going to go up and we are going to add in our component, which is text with image and button. I'm going to let GitHub Copilot guess what my props are going to be, and it looks like it's guessing kind of correctly. And then we're going to switch it. So body text is going to be the child that we're putting into this, but it's not get help. The body text that we have is called Zoom sessions. All right, so that got fixed. The heading is not get help. The heading is network with industry professionals. So I'm going to change that and pass that into my component instead, like that. Perfect. The image URL, you can see it's wrong because we don't have anything popping up here. So we are going to fix that. So this is the correct image URL that we should be passing in. GitHub Copilot tries. So it's good to use because it typed all of this for me, but I actually have to go in and put the right information. And then my link to my URL is going to be to /guest speakers because there is no /help. So let's go ahead and put that in here like that. All right. And then the button text says get help ! And that's a little bit extra of Copilot. What I want the button to say is view guest speakers. Like that. Woohoo. All right. So now I can go ahead and get rid of this because that looks how I like it. I'll probably check real quick to make sure that is true. We do meet Thursdays, 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, so I can delete that. I feel like we've actually, in this live, gotten rid of like 100 lines of code by making components, which is pretty cool. All right, so now the quote-unquote tough one. All right, the quote-unquote tough one is going to be, hey, Eduardo. Yeah, thank you. I figured out the stream. You missed a little bit earlier unless you were here, but my daughter came out of her room, and so I had to cancel that one and start a new one. But my husband's home now, so we're good. Okay. Anywho, we are going to go up to the difficult one, which is going to be this accordion. So if we go back, let's look at this text with image and button, okay? And we can see that what we have is we have a box with a body heading. Okay, so this whole thing is in a box, and then we have a body heading. All right, and then we have another box underneath that holds something, which is going to be the hello AI stories, children that we pass in. Okay, which is going to be, and these we're passing in my component called body text, which is this. All right, but in this one, the children that we're passing into the new component we just made is going to be an accordion. All right. And then below that, we have an image with a border around it, which is the component we made in the last live stream, this one. Okay. And then use the chat if you want me to go in any more detail on anything. I'm not sure what is helpful or not helpful at this point. And then finally, at the end, we have a React router link with a button. The reason why we're using this link is so that way the link history can be saved in our browser history. Okay, cool. So now that we have that, we should be able to, since we're using a child element, we should just be able to pass that accordion right in. So let's give it a try and see how it works. All right, so you can see that this is a lot larger of a component. Okay, so I'm going to actually collapse my accordion. Okay, and I'm going to then comment out this entire box. So we should, when I press save, see it go away on this page. So, and yep, there it goes. Now we just have our blank section and it's mad at us. So now we're going to use our text with image and button. We're going to let AI fill in all of the stuff. All right. And then we're going to fix it. Okay. So we need child. Okay. So now at this point, we can go and we can take this box with the accordion in it. We're going to copy it and then we can put it in here as our child and press save. Now let's take a look. And honestly, to me, it looks pretty cool. So an accordion element is part of, so in the chat, Eduardo just asked what's an accordion element. And an accordion element is part of Chakra UI. So let's go to Chakra UI's docs, and then we can look for accordion. So basically, if you use a components library, you can just use the components that they have and then edit them based on how you want. So Chakra UI made an accordion for me, which is just this, right? So it already has the buttons with the drop down. The reason it's not closing when I'm clicking it is because that's one of the settings that the accordion has. So let's scroll to, yeah, so this one, see how it toggles. So the reason why it's toggling is in part because of allow multiple. Is one of the props that you pass in. So anyway, so I'm using the accordion and then you can see that I'm like using different props and stuff like that to pass in to then edit how I want it to look. So mine doesn't look exactly right. So mine is a different color of text. Mine has a different shadowing. I also don't really love how when it's all collapsed, it's shorter. So that's something I would add to work on. But anywho, so now that we made this, we added the child element, which is this entire box that includes the accordion. You can see it's already working. AI just didn't get all of my links right, so that's why it's not. So build a full stack project with me is the heading. That's good. The image URL is obviously wrong because it's not working. So let's go and take a look at what that looks like. And then that should be here. It's actually called wireframe PNG. Yeah, of course. Yeah, Chakra UI is really cool. There's so many different components that you can use. So if you're like not super into like doing everything from scratch, it's a quick way to get things up and running. All right, Vishu, I did not read your comment. Let me see. I have little knowledge of laptop and PC. I need to get a laptop. Can you suggest? I use Mac for everything. So that would be my suggestion is to get a MacBook if that's something that's within your budget and wheelhouse. I just feel like for coding, a lot of like tutorials and resources work better with Macs. So that's what I would recommend. All right. So that our image now pops up. These are the correct things being passed in because that we just passed the accordion directly into it. The link, should that go to projects? Let's take a look. Nope. The link should go to my teachable workshop, project planning tool full stack. So let's go ahead and put that here. Which if you guys want the link to any of my workshops, that's kind of going to be what it is. It'll just redirect you to all of the workshops that I have because I actually changed that URL the other day. Next, this should say, let's get to work. So let's take that and put let's get to work up here. All right, so I'm a little bit not pleased with the button goes to the width of this. So that is interesting to me. So I'm going to go to here and take a look and see this is the button is 100%, but that is 100% of what it's in, which is in a box. So I'm curious if I need to add width is 100 here. To see how that works. This might be something that I just troubleshoot. Oh, it worked. Yay, yes. Okay. Does anyone want a better explanation of what that was and why that worked? Let me know in the chat and I can go ahead and break it down. Otherwise, I'll keep on keeping on. Okay, so now that that works and everything looks as intended, you can see that it's responsive to. That's what this media query is doing. Yes, you want it broken down. Okay, thank you, Eduardo. Okay, so basically with Chakra UI, what you're doing is you're putting things in boxes. So a good way to see what you're working with is adding a border to the box. Okay, so I'm actually going to comment this with 100% out. Let me go ahead and add the border, 1 pixel. All right, why am I adding a border? I'm adding a border so that way I can see the layout of how things are lining up on my page. Okay, so when you have this is like the easy option, right? Because I just have text and picture. Okay, so as I get smaller, okay, my box stays the same size. But if I go up here, okay, my box is actually mimicking the size of my accordion. Okay, so adding a border around it helps show us why this button gets shrunk, because the button lives within inside the link, which lives within inside this box. So even though this button width size is set to 100 pixel or 100%, the box that it's within, well, now let me add the border to this one. See, and this is why it's helpful to add borders too, because you can see that this button's not actually in that box. But let's add the border to here instead. All right, so now do you see that this box here is also this small width, okay? But if I add that I want this box here to be 100%, maybe. All right, and then let's shrink this. Okay, so that didn't actually fix it. So let's try to make this box here with 100%. Oh, well, I'm glad that, Eduardo, you asked me to explain it because we found that I had a bug before. Okay, so now this width here being 100% is going to help it. So I actually don't need this one here because this box is within this box. So does that make sense? So I don't need this border. I can get rid of it. Okay, so this box is holding everything. When the accordion was smaller, okay, because I didn't have this width here being 100% of the, when you say it with 100%, you're saying you want it to be 100% wide based on what it's inside, what space it has to fill, okay? So before I added this 100%, I'm not saying fill all the space you can. So it's just going to fill based on the content that's inside of it. So this accordion is smaller. It's not taking up that much space. So this box doesn't need to take up that much space. But if I say that this box should be taking up all of the space that it can, then it will, and it won't be based on what the content inside it is. Okay? So adding the width of 100 helps that. And adding borders to the divs or boxes or whatever you're using helps you know that. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. And yes, thank you for everyone using the chat feature because it's super helpful for me to know what to explain or what to stop rambling about. Okay, so now that this looks as I want it to, I can go ahead and delete this commented out code. I always like to comment out code before I delete it. So that way, if it turns out whatever I'm working on doesn't work, I can redo it. I can just comment it back in and then approach it later. Okay. So there's probably a lot more that we could do on here to refactor, but I think we were like 300 something lines of code and now we're at 215. So I feel pretty good about, we condensed things. We made it a little bit more modular. If I decide that on this image, I no longer want it to have this border radius, I just have to change it once in the image with border, right? If let's say I want this padding to be 10 instead of 5, I just change it once and now it's changed on all of my things. Whereas before, when I had it hard coded for each section, I would have had to change it 4 times or 5 times. Now I just change it once and all of them change. Okay. All right. So we need to clean up our linter now. So we have this linter with React that's just going to tell us when we have issues. And here we're getting warnings because we're not using some of these things. So these are all on the home page. And the reason why we imported them is because we used to have these hard coded in there, but now that we're using our components, we don't. So I'm going to get rid of all of these and this. All right. And I'm going to save. All right. So who wants to see me deploy it now? Should we start deploying our changes? I will if you don't say anything too, so that's fine. All right. So now that our compiler is happy, we're going to switch over to deploying our changes. I am on localhost. Okay, so I'm working locally on my computer and I'm looking at my changes. What I want to look at is my actual website. So that is coding-with-cali.com. Wow, that's a URL. So if you look at it, it looks the same, but the code is actually going to be different because this isn't when I hard coded everything, whereas this is with everything using my new components. So I want this to be reflected on my code. Okay. So I am going to put that window there so we can check to make sure it works. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to build a new image using Docker. Okay. I already have a Docker file in here. This is my front end Docker file. So anytime I want to build, I update my code, I need to rebuild my image. Okay. And I have my image stored in AWS. So I'm going to pull a window down so I can log in AWS. I don't think anything shows when I log in AWS, but just want to make sure since I'm live streaming this. All right. So I'm going to go to the Elastic Container Registry. All right, why do we use an Elastic Container Registry instead of something like Docker? Well, because I don't want my image to be public. And anytime you push it something to Docker's registry, it's then public. Okay, so I have yes, I can, Eduardo. It's going to take me probably 5 minutes to build a new Docker image. So we're going to save going through that while we wait. Okay, so I have a backend repository for my website, and then I have a front end one. Okay. How can you tell whether or not you need to do the back end or the front end or both? Well, you can do that with Git. Okay, so I'm going to say Git status, and I can see that I only modified things on the front end, so it would just be a waste of my time to rebuild an image on the back end. So I'm going to click into my repository in the front end, and then I'm going to use the push commands because I don't have them memorized. So the first thing is just logging into the AWS CLI. All right, so this is my front end folder. Okay, so you can see that if I ls, I have my Docker file in it. When you build a Docker file, you need to be in the same directory as your Docker file. So that's why we are in the front end folder. I'm going to paste in my AWS login CLI command. This is just going to make sure that I am allowed to push this new Docker image that I'm building to AWS. Login succeeded, yes. All right, the next thing, and this is what takes a long time, is I'm going to build my front end. So this is telling Docker, which you can see by this little guy here that he's running on my computer. I want Docker to build, all right, my front end image, and you can, and where the dot says that the Docker file is in the current directory I'm in. And then I'm going to build it. Okay, and this is why it's going to take a while. So it builds it in layers. Okay, so each one of these steps is basically a layer that it's like saving. So some of these go really quickly because I already have these layers saved, and some of them take a long time, like run build. Okay, let's go through the Docker file. So the first thing that we're doing is we're getting Node. Okay, we're just using the Node image 18 Alpine. That already exists, okay? And we are just going to say, hey, we don't need to start from scratch and do Node all by ourselves and download Node from NPM. We can just use this image that already exists. That makes it faster, okay? The reason why we have this -- platform as Linux AMD 64 is because I am on a MacBook right now, and I am building an image that then will go on a Linux machine in the cloud. So this took me a very long time to figure out, but if you add this little tag in here, that's basically just saying we want to build everything as if we're on a Linux machine, so that way it runs the same in the cloud. This applies if you are deploying manually, which is what we are going to do. We're going to go through all the steps to deploy manually. If you were using like your CI/CD pipeline, this would kind of be baked into what you're doing. So like you wouldn't need it in your Docker file. That would be part of like your commands that you're using. But anyways, we're not doing that, so that's fine. The next thing that we're doing is we're saying within the image that we are building, we want to set up a directory and we want to call that directory app. Okay, so we're just saying, make me a folder. Okay, then we're copying over the package JSON and the package lock JSON into our container. And our container has a working directory called app in it. Okay, and we're copying them into that working directory. That's what the / is. Then we're going to run npm install. All right, which you can see ran here. So we've already done the go get that, go get node. Okay. We already said, give us a directory called app in our container. We already said copy package JSON and the package lock JSON. And we already did npm install. Okay. And the reason why those took 0 seconds is because we built this image before and nothing changed in those steps between the last time we did it and now. So it doesn't need to redo it. All right, the next step is where you don't need to do this. This is my lazy way. There are more efficient ways to copy your code over. But basically what I'm saying is copy everything in this front end folder, copy it all into the working directory, which is my app folder in the container. Okay, so we're taking the whole project and we're plopping it into the container in the app folder. Okay. Now, as you get better with Docker, you can be more efficient with what you're copying over. You only want to copy the things over that you absolutely need. When I set this up, we were in the make it work phase. So I just wanted it as quickly as possible. What can we add in? All right. env. So this is going to be our environment variables. I am going to have the environment variable React app API, and then I want to set it to /API. What that's doing is, I can show you that since this takes forever to build anyway. So I'm going to go to my router for React router, and I have loader functions on my React router. So what this is doing is this is saying that we want to make an Axios request. We want to make a GET request. If this environment variable React app API exists and is defined, which is only going to exist and define when we are deployed, because when we build our Docker file, we're setting it. Okay, so if it defines, then we're going to go with that, which is /API. Okay, otherwise we're going to go with localhost at 3001 /API. Okay, what is the reasoning for this? The reasoning for this is when I'm building locally, I want to connect to my API using localhost. But when I am in the cloud, the containers talking to each other is localhost. So I don't actually say localhost. I just need to say /API. And why do I need to say /API? Because, oh my gosh, this is with Kubernetes and my ingress file. But basically, when I set up my API, I set a global prefix that's called API. And that is the way that my containers can talk to each other in the cloud. If you take the Deploy in Public challenge, we will go through all of this in lots and lots of detail. So if it's super confusing right now, that's totally okay. Just focus on we're building a Docker file for the cloud. All right, then, so that's the environment variable. You can set other environment variables here. We mostly set environment variables in Kubernetes, though, in the pods and deployment files. I don't really set most of them in Dockerfile. Okay, then we do npm run build, which is what is taking a million years right here. Okay, so we are being a little bit efficient in that we're doing a 2-stage build. So the first thing that we're doing is we're setting up this build, this set of instructions, and we're calling it build. Okay, and then we're building on top of it. So now we're saying that we want to get Nginx. Okay. Why are we using Nginx? We're using Nginx as our server to serve the static files that get built when you do npm run build. So when you are just locally using React, React has this little development server, which you can see here, right? Note that the development build is not optimized to create a production build, use npm run build. So React locally is providing us the server that's building it behind the scenes for us, compiling our code, and then letting us look at it on localhost 3000, right? But when we deploy, that's not an efficient way to do things. So what we want to use is we use our own server, which I'm using Nginx, okay? We have a configuration set up for Nginx, which is this. And basically, we're just saying that. So have you guys seen Nginx before? So there's an Nginx homepage that says like, welcome to Nginx, okay? So what we're doing basically, and that homepage is at this folder directory and at the index.html location. So what we're saying is we want to switch out our React files with this index.html file. If this is confusing as well, don't worry about it. If you do the deploy in public challenge, which is one of my workshops, I linked in the thing, we'll go through all of this step by step. For now, just know we're building our Docker file, which is here and still building. Well, Eduardo hasn't heard of Nginx before, but you will use it in the deploy in public challenge because that's the first thing we're going to deploy is just a simple Nginx server. And we're just going to look at a simple index.html file. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is expose port 80, which is just the port that Nginx runs on. And then we are going to start Nginx and that's the command that gets run when we start our container. So does anybody have any questions that you want to throw in the chat while we wait for it to build? Though it looks like we're almost done. But if you have a question yay, we're almost done. All right. So we built our image. The next thing that we need to do is we need to tag it. Okay. So the tag that they recommend is latest, but I don't use latest. The reason I don't use latest is because I want a seamless deployment. What do I mean by that? I mean that I don't want to ruin the experience of my users. Okay. So right now, users can go, like you could actually go to my website right now and you should, other than it loading a little bit faster or a little bit slower when the pod switch, you shouldn't notice much of a blip when between the old deployed version and the new deployed version. Okay. So, but we'll go over this too. But anywho, all right, this is my deployment YAML file for my Kubernetes deployment, okay? So you can see that I am specifying all this information, which we're not going to worry about now. We are going to worry about the containers. So we're saying that within this deployment that we're about to do, we want to use this image, which is my ECR image for my front end from here, right? We want to use that and we want to pull version 96. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tag this instead of latest. I'm going to tag it with version 97. Okay. And then I'm going to click enter. So that tagged it. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to push my image from my local machine from Docker and I'm going to push it to my repository. All right. And I'm going to push it with the tag v97. Also, there's better ways of writing your versioning. I was lazy when I did this. Okay, so now I pushed it. All right, it's almost done. You'll see a little, thing down there. So now we can close out of this. I'm going to reload this. And you can see that version 97 is up there. So now what we can do is we can change our deployment here to 97. And I'll explain the latest issue now, okay? So now I'm going to go to where my Kubernetes is. Let me see if my alias still works. I'm going to say kget pods, which is short for kubectl get pods, which is the command that you use to communicate with your cluster. Okay, so you can see I have 3 pods. I have my backend deployment running, I have my front end deployment running, and then I have my database migration job, which is not running and it's completed. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to update my deployment. If I used latest here, so, okay, let's go back. The version before was 96, right? So if I do k apply -f, so I'm saying kubectl, I'm saying my Kubernetes cluster, please apply the file deployment.yaml, okay? And I'm in the front end folder of this K8 manifest files thing, okay? I want to say apply this file. You're going to see a note that says, well, Callie, your file is unchanged. So because the version didn't change. So imagine now if I used the tag latest and I always had the tag latest, all of these would say latest. So whenever I changed it, I wouldn't be able to apply the changes because it would still be latest, and Kubernetes wouldn't know what to do to go grab the latest one because we're using the word latest. Can someone in the chat let me know if this makes sense? So what we do instead with the versioning is if I change this, okay, it's going to create a new pod for me, okay? And then it's going to use this readiness probe. It's going to ping that pod at the index path, okay, after 5 seconds, and then every 5 seconds after that. If it gets a successful response, then it's going to say, okay, this is my new pod. We're going to get rid of the old pod, okay? And in that moment, then the users, if you're using my website on version 96, you'll ping version 96, ping version 96, ping version 96. Once version 97 is ready, then it switches it out. And now your next ping is version 97. So let's apply it now. All right, so we applied it. Now it's going to say that it's configured. So now what we can do is we can say kget pods -w, which means watch, okay? So you can see that we have a 0 out of 1. That means that the pod is running, but the readiness probe hasn't successfully hit yet. Here, Michael. So now the probe hit and we're good. So you can see that this original deployment that we had from 47 hours ago, right, DKZGH, you can see that that's now terminating, okay, because we're good. So if we go over to this guy and I'm going to hit shift and then click because that's got a hard refresh. It took a little extra second to load because it was switching pods, but you can see that we had no downtime. If we used latest, you would have that downtime that you see those so this was at 5 seconds. And then you see this was at 11 seconds when it was ready. So those were 6 seconds that our pod was not ready. Okay. Oh, thank you. Yes, it's multicolored if anybody is excited about my microphone like Michael is. But yeah, so that was 6 seconds that my website would have been down if I used the tag latest instead of using the versioning. Okay. But anywho, that was redeploying front-end changes after making some cool components. So I'm probably going to end this live stream soon unless there's any questions. Does anybody have any questions or anything that you want to talk about? I'll chill for a moment just in case. Also, if anyone's wanting an update on my daughter, she's still not sleeping and my poor husband's been in and out of her room. All right. I'll give it another 30 seconds if there's a question coming in on the chat. Otherwise, this was super fun. Thanks, Eduardo. Yeah, the version swapping is super cool, and that's with the readiness probe. You also can have liveness probes, which we'll go into in the Deploy on Public Challenge. But me being lazy, creating my MVP didn't have one. Also, if we had a CI/CD pipeline and GitHub Actions, we could just, as soon as we pushed our changes to GitHub, this would all happen without manually. All right, cool. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and I will probably do another live stream next Sunday because this was pretty fun for me. Thanks, Sarah. And yeah, find me on LinkedIn, subscribe, do whatever I'm supposed to say here. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.